Next door to South Africa now to Mozambique, where Mozambicans will go to the polls next Tuesday. Now, on the surface, it's a two-way race between President Filipe Nyusi vying for a second term and Renamo's Ossufo Momade. But an escalating insurgency, attacks on political campaigners and a terrified population have many worried about whether the polls will be free and fair. On Monday, the head of Mozambique's poll observer mission was shot dead in a governing party stronghold. Now, gunmen fired several shots at Anastacio Matavele as he was driving away from a workshop in Xai-Xai. So for more on this now and the worrying scenario, of course, in that country, joining us via Skype is Olufunto Akinduro, who's from the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. She joins us via Skype from Maputo. Very good evening to you, ma'am. Thank you very much indeed for your time. You're in Maputo at this time. Could you describe to us what the climate is in that country ahead of next week's elections?
Well, I think thanks for having me. I should say that first. And then the climate in Mozambique, I think, may be difficult to just describe it out all in one folk, because I think different provinces in the country have different challenges, which people are now getting more and more concerned about. Of course, there is the issues of insurgency going on in Cabo Delgado. And you also mentioned the recent assassination of a citizen observer leader, Mr. Anastacio Matavele, in Gaza yesterday. So these issues have raised concerns. I think what becomes more concerning in the case of the citizen observer leader was the fact that the culprits that were apprehended were police special operations officials. So this begins to raise the question of state-sponsored violence. And when you begin to have those factors coming up within elections, within the space of an election, then you have an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. But I should say, this is not widespread, but that does not mean that it doesn't have an implication, overall, when citizen observers begin to fear for their life.
Yeah, that certainly does raise concern. I mean, are there fears of further violence from the sense that you're getting in the country at this time? Of course, as we refer to the head of the country's poll observer mission who was shot dead on Monday, what sense are you getting on the ground in terms of the fears or the concerns of the general populace of Mozambicans who are expected to go to the polls?
At this point, from our own risk assessment, election day may not have high incidence. But in Mozambique, the experience has been that the results aggregation process is where we begin to see the display of this violence, and people then get scared. So on election day, people may be able to go out and vote freely. Yeah. But from the close of the polls, starting with the counting and the aggregation, those are the aspects of the process which historically for us, we are observing in Mozambique. I believe this is our fifth, it's our sixth election observer mission. So historically, that's the aspect that we've been more concerned about.
Yeah, I respect your concerns over the fact that more concern perhaps would come once, of course, the votes have been counted and the results start trickling in. But there has already been threats of violence that have been there during the campaigning phases. For example, the breakaway Mozambique rebels, I think it was this past Wednesday, who were threatened to step up violence if campaigning had not been suspended. So I'm struggling to find a sense between the concern that you are raising and what the current sentiment is that's being shared on the ground at the moment.
Well, yes, indeed, there's been that announcement, by the Renamo junta, saying that they do have the powers, to stop the elections from going ahead. Over the period of the campaigns, the amount of violence that has been attributed to this particular group is minimal compared to the insurgency that is related more to Islamists in Cabo Delgado. There's also the concern of a recent, military operation now going on in Cabo Delgado, and the fear that this will stop people, much as, yes, the insurgency needs to be addressed, but doing it a few days before elections could also stop people from going out to vote freely and could cause an atmosphere of fear. The situation in Gaza with the death of Mr. Matavele, number one, this was violence targeted towards a citizen observer.
Yeah.
It sends a message and a shock to the civil society community in this country. And that definitely raises concerns. So yes, there is the general atmosphere of uncertainty that you could speak about. But I mean, we'll wait to see how it pans out. But I would say that it is not an overall atmosphere of fear where we expect that people would be shut indoors and all that on election day.
Well, with just a few days to go to those polls, from the assessment that you've made and the current violence that has been witnessed that could possibly, as you say, stop Mozambicans from going out to vote, from where you sit currently, would you say that the elections could be fair on Tuesday?
Well, the point is that some of these incidents have an implication on the overall integrity of the process. Once you begin to have incidents that curtail the freedom of civil society to freely participate in the process, beyond the killing of Mr. Matavele, we've also received reports of challenges with citizen observer accreditation. So once those levels of freedoms are challenged, you begin to question the overall integrity of the process. Yeah. But it's slightly too early to begin to talk about whether Tuesday will be fair. It's been a 5-year process, and it has had so many aspects to it. Some good, high moments, and some really low moments. So it's really difficult to already begin to say the elections on Tuesday will not be fair. It's too early.
It's still too early to tell, but I'm sure we would be able to speak to you at a later stage about what's happening on the ground. Olufunto Akinduro, who's the head of the Xai-Xai Elections Department, talking to us about Mozambique's upcoming October 15th elections. Let's take a short break here on The Full View. Much more coming back